Hello everyone, welcome to Drinks and Mics, brought to you by Nairametrics. My name is Ugo Dre, and we do this every week on this channel. If you're not following yet, come on man, subscribe. Just hit that subscribe button and watch previous episodes of Drinks and Mics. Of course, this is bound to be another exciting episode of Drinks and Mics. A whole lot of stuff happening during the week. I'm not here alone, of course. I've got my fellow drinkers here. Shout out, guys. Shout out. Let's start with Tunji on the right.
I thought you were going to
come after you now.
Hi guys.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to
Hot take.
No. I'm trying to put in the peace offerings before we start.
Okay.
So that nobody comes out.
Tunji's looking different, by the way, but I mean,
yes.
can
I
explain that
had
later.
one Egbon meeting today. It has nothing to do with it. So tomorrow I go back to normal.
All right. To my left, of course, is the one and only Otumba Arnold.
Oh, is that
Have
my
you
name?
earned it?
Yes, say it now.
I've earned it. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a title. Thank you.
You haven't earned it.
I have earned it. Thank
You
you.
haven't
I've
earned
worked
it.
hard for
You
it.
sure?
Prime Minister. I deserve it. Thank you. Honored here, everyone.
And of course, we got a special guest today on the show, Mr. Franklin Amo.
Pleasure to be here,
Franklin,
gentlemen.
who are you? What
Who
do
am
you
I?
do?
Who am I? What am
Where
I?
are
I
you
don't even
from?
know.
Where are you from?
Okay, so I'm Franklin Olakunle Amo. I am a investor, private markets investor in African markets, and we focus on industrials and digital infrastructure. The name of the firm is Bayless Emerging Markets, but mainly I enjoy whiskey.
Ooh.
Let's go.
Yeah,
Let's go.
By the way,
Party
guys,
going.
today's whiskey and rum is courtesy of Ledrop Nigeria Ltd, and those are the guys who have those drinks right here. And as you can see, we drink responsibly. Please always make sure that you drink responsibly. We do not advertise drunkenness here. Is that the right word, Tunji?
I don't know. But you know, the thing is, the table is quite intimidating. It's just
Really?
like,
I mean, we're not drinking everything here. Oh.
Aren't we?
No.
No, I thought we were. I thought we were.
the hot takes would be lava hot.
The whole takes me too much.
Anyway, what a busy week it's been, Nigeria.
really
Busy week.
Yeah.
Today is dominated by, like, I doubt there'll be any Trump story today. I really doubt the way things are going. I mean, well, you never know. You know, Drinks and Mics, the way the stories just evolve. But we're going to start first with the big story during the week, the bombing of the Niger Pipeline.
Crazy.
That stuff shook everybody to the bones. And the folks here are going to explain why we're very worried. We did hear that it's back in operation. No official statement yet as at the time we're taping this show. But there are palpable fears, and we're going to explain why. Let's start with you, Franklin. You heard this story, and
well, let's just start by explaining why it's a big deal. I mean, it's 450,000 barrels per day of the roughly 1.6 to 1.8 that Nigeria pumps. And as everyone knows, that's our main source of FX. And obviously, the new administration has promoted itself as an administration that wants to be open to business, open to foreign investors, open to foreign direct investment. And just as that narrative was starting to bear fruit with investors, you have something like this happen. So it's just a real gut punch for the country, I think.
are you hearing anything from foreign investors so far? I mean, any sound bites? Are they worried?
Yeah, I mean,
Or are they just watching?
So, you know, this kind of came within an interesting context because last week, the big news was Dangote losing access to Naira-denominated crude. And what was at least put out there, and there's a lot of back and forth about what's true and what's not true, was that the reason for that was that Nigeria had already pre-sold a lot of the crude for a long period of time to raise more dollars. So who knows what's really happening? But the point is that illustrates how desperate the country is for foreign direct inflows of hard currency. So whether it's just the loss of the export revenue on the crude itself or the signal it sends to foreign investors around the safety and sanctity of making those investments in country, it's just really, really bad news, I think. And I hope, to your point about it being back up online, I mean, how quickly they respond to this and how quickly the context in which the events happen gets resolved is, I think, going to be something that investors are going to watch very closely.
Alan, I'm going to come to you in a bit, but let me come to Tunji first because I just want to hear a street view. Let's hear what the street. Yours is elitist view. Let's hear street view. Let's hear street view. Tunji is Tunji
informal market guy.
The informal market guy. You know what I mean? The street guy. So, there's a political twist to this. We don't want to go into that, delve into that here. But on the streets, what does this mean? What's your biggest fear for ordinary Nigerians? I'm sure there's forex angle to this.
Yeah. There
is even product supply, availability, to this as well. But what are your biggest fears or concerns?
Several things. We started to see inflation kind of like stabilize, GDP starting to grow strong, the Naira, finding some level. This just, put the spanner in the works. And you could start feeling it. FX parallel market today, you want to go check the markets. It's driving up again. Naira is getting weaker just on the fear that, this could, start to affect the long-term strength of the Naira. I think a lot of the average Nigerians do not understand what is going on. They just kind of see it as a rivers. They are fighting. And of course, it brings into question. It kind of highlights why the president was very decisive in his move, even though I feel it was. Anyway, not going there. But you kind of can tell how important it is to the entire narrative. So it's like we needed all the ducks to be in a row.
Yeah.
And this kind of just throws the spanner in the works. But I think on the streets, people still don't get the real feeling, but it's starting to show in the FX market. It's starting to show in the FX market.
But you know what scares me though is that no one's talking about, no one has mentioned. It shows you how easy it is to topple Nigeria. How vulnerable we are.
Economically, that is.
Economically, it's that easy.
And Cardoso actually said that. Some of the gains that we're having
it's so easy. It's so easy, and it also kind of pushes the point of diversification as well. Because if we're relying on a couple of pipelines, and I can just go and I'm not saying I can just go and just put a homemade bomb, and the Naira gets pushed away. Everyone's nervous. Everyone's scared. The president has to call a state of emergency. It shows you how fragile we are, right? And it also kind of buttresses my point when I talk about when we open our economy to the outside world, when we're going through a reform, we need to really figure out our diversification and we need to figure out our diversification out, right? Before we open, we need to figure our reforms out and really batten down the hatches before we open. Because listen, FPI can just say, you know what, I don't like this. I'm out.
Yeah. And I think what you're speaking to is a sense of, I don't want to be too grandiose and philosophical, but there needs to be more of a sense of national purpose, right? Because, truly, and okay, I'll tell you a story. Okay, so
I like stories.
I can't say too much. Again, I'm in private markets, so I can't say too much, but I'll give you the contours. We were raising debt finance for a project that essentially was a reflection of Nigeria Inc., the country's risk, and the price of the capital was going to be a reflection of Nigeria Inc.'s risk. And when you compare it to even other African countries, similar countries, countries who pump a lot of oil, export commodities as their main way of making money, those countries borrow much more cheaply than Nigeria. Angola, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, these places, and you look at the sort of credit spreads and the yields, and you say, I was, as a Nigerian, I was a little bit annoyed. I was like, wait, why? Because investors were saying, I will only lend at these prices, right? And clearly, it was a perception of risk, right? And anything can happen anywhere. It's very difficult to run a country, especially difficult to run a country like Nigeria. But it does make you think, if this is so important, this is the main way we make FX, 450,000 barrels per day. How can someone, you can't do this
How
in
can
Saudi.
you get there?
You
Yeah.
can't do this in Qatar. You can't do this in
nah.
UAE.
Yeah,
Somebody will come and blow up a pipe. It can't happen.
Yeah.
I think in if there's a silver lining somewhere is if you want to compare, and in as much as I do not want to talk about the political actions of the president, you do realize that he seems to be reform-minded because his instant move to try and do something,
And do it quickly.
yeah,
And
is in
decisively.
vast contrast to the last president.
Yeah,
But
true.
Tunji, couldn't he have avoided this?
Now you're going.
Well, you're going in
now
there.
you're
You're
going
going there.
there,
now.
because
You're
now,
going there.
like,
I
it's
don't
a
want to
different
go there. You
conversation.
know,
No, to
you
your
know we had
point.
this conversation
To your
yesterday.
point, we do have like assets, national assets here that we do need to guard. That we know it's very critical
Yeah.
to the economy in general.
Yeah.
Like, how do you not avoid these things regardless of the political, connotations of it?
Yeah.
I mean, didn't we sort of, in a way, anticipate this?
Well, it's been spoken about in bits and bits for the last 2-3 weeks, months even. I think the first time, just Google the words BOMB and Google pipeline, Nigeria. You would see that the conversations and the threats from different angles.
My
within
point
the-
exactly.
within that
So this should be
particular space
anticipated to
and
the
go
degree.
all the way back
If
like
it's a threat.
6-7 months.
Yeah.
Because it's for me, I was just wondering who could have done this, and I was checking, and you see all kinds of groups for different reasons, saying we're going to do this, and so it's been spoken about, and it's not a new thing really. So could we have avoided it? I think we could. I honestly think we could, but we're here now.
Yeah.
I mean, so we don't know where this takes us to, guys, because there's a political, solution in quotes on paper now. We don't know how that's going to pan out. But I guess, guys, this is one discussion or one topic that we're probably going to take on for the next couple of episodes. I'm hoping that this quells easily. But before we segue into another topic, Arnold, what do you think CBN does now? Like, from the point of view of markets? Yeah, like, what does this mean for a lot of the assumptions?
I mean, it's almost
that
like
they've
back
had?
to square one to a degree, right? If this negatively impacts the Naira, it's back to square one. It's back to, which I don't see how they'll get out of this, but it's maybe back to trying to keep the. Is it keep the because what's been strengthening the Naira in my view has been a lot of FPI flows, right? So it's now if this guy's exits, if this hot money leaves, we're back to square one. So you want to keep the hot money in and you want to attract more hot money.
Which would make sense.
Back to supporting the Naira where you can, back to issuing OMO, because OMO has been the tool that they've been using, right? Back to issuing OMO, back at the late, heavy, high 28, 29%, 30% yields. Which, as you know, I'm not 100% supportive, but that's what they've been doing. So that's probably what they're going to have to do.
I mean,
My hope is
isn't
that this
good
thing
for
gets fixed.
investors? I mean, ain't that
It's lovely for investors.
bright spot
It's
for
lovely
investors? Like 20.
And I mean, obviously,
You don't want to see 28% yield.
I would love to see 28% yield. But my worry now, so
Why do you hate the rest of us?
so you have two Arnolds, right? You have the me that's like, yeah, give me that. But then you have the me that's worried about the DMO, the cost of funding for the DMO, and also the CBN as well. How are these guys, like, how does this thing
How
end?
they're gonna make it? Yeah.
So as an investor, yes, because give it, and especially at those prices, it's net positive real, right? Because inflation is at 23%, 23.18,
Which we're going to talk about in a bit.
which you're going to talk about. So
I
it's
do
good
hope.
for us,
I do
but-
hope that the pipeline has been fixed. If it has, it will show some level of seriousness
Yeah,
on
yeah,
our
yeah,
side
yeah,
as a
yeah.
country. It will show that, and it those kind of things are little things, but it kind of shows your investors that we're committed to making sure that we pump. We might have lost 1 or 2 days, but that's nothing in the grand scheme of things.
But we have to really
I
we have to focus on the vulnerability, because one thing that that makes us an emerging market, a frontier market, is that we're so vulnerable.
Exactly.
It's so easily to
And why can't we take the next step, right? This is 2025. There's technology. There is, there's surveillance. There's a lot.
I know a lot of
that can protect
companies
these
that
things.
render surveillance services.
Absolutely.
But man, this is Niger. I think the larger message here is that, look,
With MTN, can give you a
no
camera.
matter what the central bank does, no matter what FPIs want to do, no matter how much we speak about this economy, the politics of things just need to work.
Yeah.
This
Without
just
politics working, the economy just can't work.
this just reminded me of a comment in on the last show when we said something about Nigeria happened to Dangote, and then the person wrote that Nigeria could happen to all our predictions.
Yeah.
And whoever you are,
Take your flowers. Talking about Dangote though, Dangote Refinery announced that it halts sale of petroleum products in Naira, citing, of course, FX mismatch, and that was because of the Naira for whatever swap that he had with the NNPC. What does this mean though? I mean, we're not going to dwell too much on this, but frankly, what does it mean? Does it mean higher fuel prices coming on stream, or is this just much ado about nothing?
Well, I think you have to take a short-term and a long-term view, right? I think in the short term, this was expected. I mean, I'm not privileged enough to know Alaji personally, but if you spoke to him and asked him his personal view of how he thought this was going to go, he probably thought, yeah, there'll be 2, 3, 4 years of Wahala, and then this thing will settle down. They will find a settlement. They will settle amongst themselves and figure this thing out forward. So I think in the end, we should keep in sight that, and I know there's been a lot of banter about, Dangote, and people have very polarized views about the guy, but, the refinery is a good thing. In the long-term development of this country, the refinery, and West Africa really, the refinery is a good thing. So I think in the short term, you will probably have volatility in prices. They will probably go up here and there as he has these, tit-tats with the various established system around downstream petrol. But I think he's done it, right? He's built it. It's there.
it's an asset.
It's an asset. I mean, this will sort itself out in the long term.
Teething problems.
Yeah, it's teething.
So what does it
problems.
mean for the man on the street now?
The men on the street will have to pay more money for fuel. I'm sorry.
You think that's what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think that's the reality.
No, but it is the whole idea when you say you remove subsidies. The shocks in prices will affect the man on the street. It's inevitable.
So this one is the swap deal now. So shouldn't NNPL just quickly come in or something? Or does it mean Dangote loses that fuel price war?
The question is, why did he start the conversation?
That's not the question.
Yeah, but that's Dangote's business model, though.
Exactly.
Right? He always comes to the market, he undercuts everyone.
Yes.
That's a Dangote thing in every country in every way.
Yes.
So we all knew that he was coming, but the thing is, how sustainable was that?
Yeah. So does this kill the sustainability? Is that what?
Yes.
Yeah. It questions it 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this brings.
So what next then? What's going to happen? Are they going to renew this contract, or is this the end of it? What do you think the president does?
Eventually they will.
Yeah.
Because again, don't forget that in the broader context, they're trying to promote this idea of Nigeria being open for business. We need these flows, as you said very rightly. And you put yourself in the shoes of an investor in, Denmark or Ohio or Abu Dhabi, and the largest investor in Africa. Not just Nigeria, in Africa, is mistreated in his own country.
Yeah.
That's bad optics.
That's what you put it. Yeah.
Irrespective of how you feel about the guy. I mean, you don't have to like him, you don't have to love him, nothing. But just as a sensible business person marketing your product, right? You say, hey, come shop in my shop. But then I come to your shop and your junior brother, you're beating him on the way. It doesn't work. Why should I come to your shop? Right?
Exactly.
I think I suspect that cooler heads will prevail, and eventually they'll find a settlement.
Eventually.
All right. I mean, we all know what this means for inflation, and inflation numbers were out in February. February inflation numbers were out just during the week, and according to the NBS, Nigeria's inflation numbers were, was it
23.18?
Something.
Why is Studio smile? Is it hot take?
It kind of looks like
hot take is at 20.
I don't know if it's a hot take.
Hot take is at 15.
It just looks like
but I've already said the hot take at the time.
We're itching closer to
the 15.
To the 15%.
And we're gonna get there. I did say it.
Yeah, we're gonna get there.
So any sticking point for you with those numbers? Anything that you see progress? Because I mean, month on month, I think was 2% or thereabout. I don't know how that, like 2%.
So if you look around, just generally feel Nigeria, as in you
prices really coming down.
No, so they don't have to come down for inflation to drop. They just have to remain stable.
True.
True. So, and the prices, we've not seen any, you've not gone to the supermarket recently and seen a spike in prices of normal commodities. Like, there are things that have those spikes here and there, like things like dairy, eggs, and all those kind of things. Those have those fluctuations. But, regular stuff that you normally buy on a day-to-day basis are normal price. I've still stayed the same prices. So I do believe that we'll continue to see a drop in inflation till the end of the year. I do not know what will happen with this pipeline thing, because it could create a whole lot of stuff. And I do not know if the nation depends on River State for anything in terms of food produce. Not that much. So that of course will not affect.
But what about this
inflation.
Dangote issue? Won't that contribute to inflation numbers?
Well, so it will, but it, like I said, it's still the rise, right? It's the rise of the increase. Yeah. So it's not as long as Dangote doesn't move prices to like 150 per liter, we're not going
1,150 per liter.
So sorry, 1,150 per liter.
1,000 per liter.
So if we still stay around that 980, 970, we're still good.
It's at 8 something now, though.
Yeah, I mean, we all come with 900, right? We all come with 900. So if we stay around that 900 place, I think we'll still be good. And mind you, the general context of inflation, especially the basket, is now is enlarged. We've put a lot more things inside it, and those things are not as affected by petrol as we used to have. The previous basket was heavily affected by petrol. Yeah. Petrol moves like this, everything goes this way. Yeah. Now it's a bit more balanced. I think that was the thinking in the basket, really.
Franklin, before you chime in, Arnold, a lot of comments online, about the MBS suggest, a little bit of distrust from Nigerians.
Okay.
A lot of people don't think these numbers are real.
Yep.
Even though there's been a lot of explanation around rebasing and what it means. We've tried to explain that here as well. But people don't seem to buy it. What do investors think? Do investors buy these numbers?
Well, I think investors have less trouble with the numbers than the man on the street, if I'm honest. And for a very good reason, right? Because the man on the street lives these numbers, the investor studies these numbers. It's a very different perspective. Right?
Could you repeat that?
No, I mean,
you said the man on the street lives,
he experiences, he
and
feels
investors study the numbers.
And they study the numbers, it's data, it's
kind
intellectual.
of like me and Arnold.
Exactly. See his suits, see his native, I mean,
today's pick on
kind of like me and Arnold. These people are not affected by the problems. That's the reality, right? So, 800 naira, 1,000 naira.
It's a number.
What's the big deal? But for the average guy, the guy who's driving keke and a pep, the guy who's climbing Okada, this is life or
real
death,
life.
And it's cumulative. This is the other issue about the inflation, because you're spot on, right? The inflation comes down if the rate of rise is moving down. But for the guys who have been month to month this is now going on how many months of consistent, persistent, elevated prices of basic necessities. Right? The mood is very hot out there, right? The mood is very hot. Unlike my bonds here, you chairman.
I don't know. Maybe this is an opportunity to just are you gonna take all this?
No, I'm just saying. I spent.
Come back.
You don't seem phased by the inflation numbers.
No, I mean, see, for me, data now. For me, it was the rate of disinflation that I wasn't expecting. It's quite aggressive from 24.4 to 23.18. I think we all expected inflation to come down, right? We all expected, because the whole world, not the whole world, okay, Africa is emerging markets are in a state of disinflation. Macros are looking better. But that speed, the rate of change was what shocked me. And that's what I'm trying to get my head around. I mean, base effect, same time last year was 31 point something, the same time February last year. Base effect, we all knew, rebasing.
I said it.
Come down.
We went.
But for me, it's what I'm trying to figure out is how much of it is effects. And I go back to the effects thing, because effects is Naira appreciated 2.75% in February. So what happens now when we go back to what the real move of Naira is? Right. How does that affect, if you look at the numbers, how does that affect this disinflation that we're in? And then what happens now with this pipeline burst, or this 450,000 barrels per day taken out of the market. Well, what does that do for effects? What does that do for petrol prices? And what does that do for inflation for this month?
So the thing about inflation really, at least from the Nigerian perspective, is they're major drivers. It's not run like any other place. So in another country, you will cut rates. You hike rates, and that would mop up liquidity in the economy, and you would find that inflation will start to drop. Nigeria is not like that. It's because the real drivers of inflation are structural.
Yeah,
they're structural. So it's about the inefficiencies of Nigeria. You have a meat clog somewhere, and meat can't get to other parts of the country. Meat increases, that affects inflation. So those issues have been stable, is what I mean.
Okay.
Those issues. So if you really understand how the Nigerian inflation story. Now, I'm not talking about imported inflation. Imported inflation is another story altogether. You buy cereal from the US, you do all those you buy new cars, you buy things like this. Those are different conversations. But the average man on the street with like beans, meat, eggs, those kind of things, they've not had any spikes. So it's expected that inflation will continue.
Inflation came out 20. It
was about 23 point something percent as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So you would, if you continue to see that stability around the infrastructure around food, you will continue to see inflation drop.
Yeah.
As long as you don't have anything that is crazy, maybe herdsmen do something somewhere, or one farm does something somewhere, you will continue to see food inflation drop. And I'm hearing some stories around the government, talking about food clusters around the country that they're trying to work on. That will obviously push inflation down. So I do expect single digits very, very soon.
How
Single
soon?
digits?
I'm telling you. I'm very.
Well,
I said
Is that a hot take? Is that a hot take?
The first
Is that a hot take?
Yes.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we have a hot take. We have a hot take. We've not had one in a while, so we have a hot take.
I'm not saying 5%. I think somewhere around 8%, 8.5.
It's just the way he drops
This 2020, 2025?
No, so early next year.
Oh.
Is this
is this
like is this based on some kind of research or just Potter?
No. So
is it Potter?
It's not. So it's how you see inflation work, and you see how NBS gathers the data for inflation. Right. So I don't want to go into the nitty gritty of the GHs and all of that.
Yeah, it has history.
So if you understand how they gather inflation numbers and the data for inflation, you will understand that we're on a trajectory to go lower.
Yeah.
As long as there's no spike in anything.
Yeah. Something important you said was, it's interesting how, and this is anecdotal, I don't have like direct data, but, a few years ago, we were very worried about insecurity.
Yeah.
Right. And especially in the north, in the middle belts, there was a lot of insecurity, and that's where a lot of the food comes from. And as you have seen less, I guess, at least palpable fear about insecurity, you've also seen that stability in food prices. I think that's a big deal.
Yeah. Insecurity in food prices. 100%.
So once you don't have any shocks around the basic food items and the basics around Nigeria's delivery infrastructure, then inflation should
one thing we can all agree is that we expect inflation to come. Well, inflation is coming down.
Yeah.
Right, we can all agree that, but it's at what rates? Is my question.
And the bigger question becomes, and it's been behind everything we've talked about so far, is what is the strategy for Nigeria, right? Because
Ugodre is the one that knows, because we've been asking him.
I mean, a lot of the stuff that we do feels very putting out fires, right? Putting out immediate fires
down the road as well.
And I get it, right? Like you have to solve the immediate emergency, but I think at some point we need to step back and say, okay, what is this Nigeria supposed to be doing? How do we address that on a long-term basis and have projects, plans that really, you talked about importing inflation. I mean, don't get me started on imports, right? I mean, there's so many things that we should not be importing as a country of 200 million people, with very arable land, the big sea coast. But anyway, I think the real killer of inflation is industrial policy.
Yes.
Remember, haven't we had several industrial policies though? I mean, like
that we actually do. that we actually finish. So like we must finish our homework.
It's a lot of audio policy.
Yeah, there's a lot of audio policies.
Yes,
Yeah.
PowerPoint projects. PowerPoint projects.
To actually do it. Yeah.
Yes.
And this was what we're asking Ugo Dre that time the other day. He said $1 trillion economy, and I'm like, what does this $1 trillion economy
sounds good. It sounds
look
good to
like?
say.
What does
We're
it
getting there.
What
It's
is
not
inside
now,
this
it's
$1 trillion
2030.
economy? Now I get the feelings that I'm looking at.
Already, when we rebase, you're on $500 billion. Hope you know that, right?
There's still $500 billion is still a long way away.
To be
We'll
honest,
rebase again in another 5 years.
to be honest, I mean,
Just
look,
kidding, though.
to be honest, $1 trillion is woefully unambitious.
Oh.
Woefully unambitious.
You heard that?
There you go. I like that. Please explain. Please explain.
Woefully. We have at least 200 million people.
Okay.
We are on the same, longitude as very big economies in Europe. We are on the Atlantic coast. We have a huge coastline. We have all sorts of very different environmental environments across the length and breadth of the country. We have so many fundamental building blocks to be a powerhouse country, and we always have.
100%.
And we always have, right? Like aiming for $1 trillion for me is not exciting, right? I think we really should be.
But I'm going
how
to
do
put
we
some
get
span in the works, though, right? We love to scream our population, right? We love to. So back in the day, when you look at PowerPoints from this retail, this consumer goods, foreign companies wanted to come to Nigeria, it was always 200 million, 150 million, whatever it was. And the question in my mind was always, how much of this 150 million or 200 million people can actually afford this? How much of this 200 million human capital
Just look at MTN.
is actually capital that...
But do
you understand my question?
I
feel like we've thrown this...
likes to trigger me.
No, but we throw this number in the air because like 200 million people.
How much
It's not
is human
just 200
capital
million,
is
200 million,
actually...
bro. Like, we have the youngest youth population in the world at the moment. That's power, bro.
You've articulated the problem, however,
Okay.
that I think the Nigerian strategists, if we have any, always fall down upon, which is a 200 million. Yeah, if you're a foreign FCMG, whatever the acronym is. Yeah, you're looking at it from, I can sell my stuff to these people, right?
Yeah.
But that's not how, if you're running Nigeria, you shouldn't think about it that way.
Yeah.
Those 200 million people are producers. They should be making stuff that we sell outward or inward. Not necessarily about that, because the only way you create their buying power is to give them something to do, so they earn money to now buy stuff, right? So you shouldn't really focus on what they can buy first. You should focus on what they can make first.
Interesting.
I think what's even more interesting is that we do not understand demographics in Nigeria. So when we say poor people, we generally lump all poor people into one single category. So when you say poor person, what do you mean? Is it the person who's begging on the road? What do you mean? Is it the person who's selling?
United Nations has a definition.
Who's selling? No. With Nigeria, we do this. Are we talking about the people selling wares on the road, selling pure water on the road? Are we talking about the delivery guys? Are we talking about the guys that drive? Because the delivery guys make maybe 3,000 a day, right? The guy selling in traffic makes maybe 200 naira, 500 naira a day. Are we talking about the Are we talking about the guys that have restaurants? The woman that has a
buka or something.
The definition is $2 a day, isn't it?
My point is there a large set of poor people, middle income class people, rich people. When we make policies, we tend to lump a large set of people into one category. And that is why it fails, because you are trying to address a problem that doesn't affect him, but you're pushing him into the mix by force. And he's like, I don't have this problem. But we've just done that. And so I'll tell you one in my sector. It's micro pensions. So micro pensions was supposed to be created for informal sector workers, right? Anybody that is informal. But in the structure and in the messaging, you kind of feel you're talking to poor people. Yeah? And in our experience, I came into the market thinking we're going to see people, contribute 2,000, 1,300, and we do see those people, don't get me wrong. But then I'm seeing people, contributing 100K every month. $1 million every week. 4 million every month. I'm telling you now, the question I'm asking myself is, what do we call these people?
Right.
Do you get?
Right.
This guy is no longer micro because I can afford to pay that. I can afford
So
to pay
those are
that.
informal guys now.
Yeah, but the point is you've lumped them into a thinking that they're all poor.
Yeah.
But this guy is not poor in
Yeah.
any stretch of the imagination. So if you're going to think about it properly, if you're going to really create that $1 trillion economy, you have to segment. It's not just, okay, we're now going to start farming. Farming for who? What kind of farming?
Yeah.
You know, we need to be able to segment and put everybody in their different areas so that it does work across the entire economy.
Yeah.
Frankly, let me just put you on the spot though. So
He's opened the calculator.
I'm
Oh,
trying to
dear.
get that figure. So
Sorry.
what is your ideal size for Nigeria GDP wise? Where should we be on?
If $1 trillion is not ambitious.
Exactly.
Okay, so back in the Africa Rising days, right, we were around for a long time in the 500, 510 sort of space, right? And if we're very honest about that period of time, you know, it was good. Don't get me wrong. We had, and a lot of it was driven by these FPI flows you're talking about, a lot of foreign direct investment and so on. But there weren't sort of truly transformative structural reforms, really, right? You know, we didn't generate a manufacturing base. We didn't develop any sort of, you know, we had the telecoms revolution, which I think added a lot to all of that. But I think if we really look, okay, let's look at what we have. We have a large and very youthful population, which is diverse, by the way, right? We have different regions with different likes and dislikes.
Very good English speaking.
Very good English speaking on the right time zone, right?
Exactly.
You know, we can talk to the East, we can talk to the West, where we are. I think if you look at that and you take, you know, a few big sectors, agriculture, you know, consumer goods manufacturing, heavy industries, these kinds of things. I mean, each of those things should add a couple $100 billion of GDP, right? So if you on that basis alone, I would be looking at 2.5 at a minimum.
$2.5 trillion.
$2.5 trillion economy at a minimum. At a minimum. Look at. I mean, Saudi Arabia is like, you know, what, 2 trillion, I think, something like that, 1.5 trillion. And, you know, they're a mono economy like ours with a much smaller population.
Just some stats here though.
Yeah.
We do have the likes of Brazil at $2.1 trillion.
Okay.
Canada 2.1 trillion, Russia 2 trillion, Mexico 1.7 trillion, Australia 1.7, South Korea 1.7, Spain 1.6 trillion.
Those should be our peers. Those should be our peers.
So let me give you a different twist.
Those should
Which is
be
what
our
I
peers.
was calculating, right?
Yeah.
So if we look at this on a GDP per capita levels,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
at 1 trillion, we are essentially looking at a $5,000,
Which is still
per
Yeah,
very
annum
low.
GDP,
Which is still quite
pretty
low,
low
yeah,
because
which is still quite low.
Spain at 1.6 trillion, assuming
GDP
that my
per
numbers are correct,
per capita.
GDP per capita is at 33,000.
33.
Yeah.
Small country.
Small
Big
country,
GDP.
population. Yeah.
33,000.
Per capita, yeah.
Yeah.
So at a modest, so your point is at a modest, I mean, in quote, $10,000 GDP
Per capita.
per capita.
Yep.
That would give us like 2 trillion. So that's probably where we should be.
Yeah.
So where did the president come with the 1 trillion from? Was there any? Did he
No.
have this in the back of his mind, or he just came up with that number?
I do feel that 1 trillion might have been ambitious to them at the time they said it.
Yes.
You know,
And it sounded good as
it
well.
sounded good at the
Yeah.
time because, of course, we're coming from a very low base.
Yes.
Things were not very, very dysfunctional. I think the closer they get to it, the more they start to realize, I think we undershot here. You know, because the truth is, if we're at 500 now, about 500, right? It's not how much reform? I mean, it's not a
Would
lot of reform.
would the politics of Nigeria ever get us to that number?
Sorry,
fragility,
question, the what?
With the politics, will the politics
allow
of
for that?
Nigeria ever get us anywhere
So
close
here's
to
the
that
thing.
number?
Here's the thing. I believe with that conversation, it is we need, and I've said it many times, we need something we can all believe in.
Correct.
We can all get behind, and it's the president's job to find that thing. I don't know what it is. Former President Goodluck tried to do assembling cars. He tried to do cassava bread. It just didn't excite anybody. You know, something that feels like our own, something that we can be fully proud of and say
national
with
So
our
you're making it sound like it's an economic. Is it an economic problem or is it a political problem?
It's both.
both.
It's both, but it is more political. You're right. You're very right. I mean, and I think to Tunji, what you said earlier. I mean, look, in the defense of the administration, right? If they had said anything more than 1 trillion, they would have been laughed at it, right?
Like, 100%.
At the time.
1 trillion, I'm like,
1 trillion felt very ambitious because I think we have a psychological problem in Nigeria, more than political, more than economic, which is we are not ambitious as a nation, which is very, very dangerous, right?
Yeah.
You know, and particularly in the world we live in, the world we're going into.
Is it the Nigerian people or
as
the
a nation,
Nigerian
as a nation.
leadership?
Nigerians are ambitious as individuals.
Exactly.
They are
we're not a
not
collective.
ambitious.
So
to his point, there's no national project. There's no national project. What is the national project of Nigeria? I don't know. Do you know? Do your parents know? None of us know.
They had ARGP.
What was that?
What is that?
I didn't want to ask. I was like, what is that?
Don't you remember? That was Buhari's plan.
ERGP.
Okay.
We have renewed hope now. I mean, like they've given you like $50 billion
Look,
budget.
I mean, kidding aside, renewed hope is not a bad slogan, right? But the problem with it is, let's add some meat on the bones. And my view is I'm a very pragmatic kind of guy, right? So whether you like somebody, whether you don't like somebody, what I think we've forgotten as Nigerians is that whether you hate the guy or like the guy, you live here.
Exactly.
You are Nigerian, right? Whether you're in London, whether you're in America, you're still Nigerian, right? And how this goes affects you. So, if you don't like the guy, complain in a constructive way about what they can be doing better. If you like the guy, give them ideas, right? But we need that spirit of what is this not? Where are we going, right? Like I feel like Nigerians is vibes, right? Like it's just vibes,
So
right?
to this point, I was listening to this show this afternoon. It was talking about pushback on Trump, and it was more like Trump is saying it's worth going into a recession if the reforms they're pushing through works. And
God help.
No. I'm going somewhere. I'm going somewhere. But the people.
Just say I love Trump. Just own it. Like, what's the big deal? Own it, man.
So
MAGA.
I never heard that one sound like this. It sounds like it was an abuse. My God.
I'm sweating here, guys.
I'm not even going to
No, but please.
I'm not going to
I think
Anyway, make your point.
The guy was saying that he was pointing out different articles, Wall Street Journal, this person saying, we don't want to go here. You're taking us to where we don't want to go to. And it just struck me in that moment, right? That the issue isn't about where they're going.
Yeah.
They just don't like who is leading them.
Correct.
Okay, interesting.
Correct.
Yeah,
You get
Yeah.
So it's
I understand.
this tunnel, right?
Correct.
We just don't like this guy that's taking us down this tunnel.
Correct.
If it was somebody we liked, we'll be behind
him. Yeah.
True, yeah?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it wasn't about the conversation was really about the suffering, the hardship. It was who is leading us down this path.
Yeah.
But
And I feel some way in the Nigerian context, we need to find our leader needs to find that thing where we can say, I don't like this guy, but I like what he wants to do. Let's go.
there's a deep immaturity around Nigerian strategic development. And what I mean by that is, politics is about personality. Politics is about, vibes in many cases, right? But, in a successful country, the politician almost doesn't matter, right? Because the country has enduring national strategic
But that's been put to test in
interests.
the US right now.
Yeah.
Go on, though.
It is and it isn't, right? Because to Tunji's point, Tunji's onto something, I think, because yes, Trump is a polarizing figure. There's no avoiding that. So you either love him or you hate him.
Yeah.
Many people will die for him. Other people can't stand him. But he is forcing a strategic question that has been danced around the U.S. for a long time. What is that question? It's actually quite similar to the Nigerian question, right? America has become a consumer economy, a service economy, where for a very long time, it built this middle class on being a manufacturing and production economy, right? And most large population countries try to be manufacturing economies because it creates jobs and it creates pretty good jobs, right?
Yeah.
And people feel like, and the thing about a job, what is a job? It is money, it is paying your bills, but it's a purpose. It's an identity.
Yeah.
I can feed my family. My kid is going to do better than me.
occupies my
I'm
mind.
saving, right? There's a confidence
virtue.
that
There's
a dream
right?
around
Work,
it
job is a
is,
virtue.
right?
Yeah.
And the thing about service economies, right, is that structurally they make a small amount of people very wealthy and they bring prices down very low, but a lot of very poor people, get created because you don't need a lot of them for jobs. Now, the trade-off always is, but those poor people get low prices, right? And the question becomes, what's more important, low prices or dignified wages, right? And that's the fight America is having, and it's layered in all kinds of other stuff because it's politics, right? Right? So there's there's woke and there's this and there's other stuff, but underneath it all, that's what's. And in Nigeria, we haven't had this fight in a long time, probably since the 80s or 90s, since SAP really. But does Nigeria want to be a maker country or a country that vibes and dances and does Afro beats and this kind of stuff?
Consumer economy. All we've done is.
But guys, I mean, we've stayed too long on this topic, but I think it's pretty interesting. And one other area I was going to also delve into within the same topic of Nigeria and what we do produce. We're seeing a lot of young Nigerians sort of delve into the arts. You're seeing a lot more influencers these days. You're seeing a lot more content creators these days. People tying towels and dancing. You're seeing I don't know. Tunji. So is that like? If you see a lot of young,
is that our national identity?
Is there a lot of young Nigerians really going into
it's just a sign of a huge unemployment.
Is it because they can't get? Because this
it's a sign of
I've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs and they're finding it very difficult to actually employ young people because most young people today
they want to be content
probably want to be content creators or do something.
But I think that's
art.
a
So
global problem.
Is that
that problem is a global problem.
Yeah,
it's
not a Nigerian problem.
It's not a Nigerian
One is to be
problem.
content creators, yes.
You
But
guys
the
sure
fact
about that?
If you go to China, then I don't think
So it depends.
I do agree.
Yeah.
But again, it comes to the conversation of we're a
consumer,
service
we're a consumer,
economy.
yeah, we're a consumer.
We
very
Are we a
much.
service economy
We are.
by choice or we're a service economy by design? Because of just the way things are.
We are by choices, but by choices I don't think we know we made, right?
Yes.
Because we decided
We
decided
There was
to
nothing else to
crush
do.
our manufacturing industry. But that was a
Yes.
choice.
Yes.
It was made in the 80s, 90s, but it was a choice, right? And what worries me about today and our policy direction today is inadvertently we're making similar choices. Because when you fund your economy with FPI, when you fund your economy with hot money chases short-term, very fast returns, and that's not manufacturing.
No, it's
right?
not.
That's
No,
not
it's
manufacturing.
No, it's
Manufacturing takes a long time.
Yeah,
The
sticky
returns
money.
can be limited. And in fact, for a very long time, they can stay limited, but you're making a trade-off. You're like, I'm taking these more limited returns because I want Tunji and Emeka and Chioma to have a job, right?
Yeah.
And to fund a family, right? Which one is more important to you? Is it your shareholder returns, or is it for Chioma to say I can feed my family? It's a choice.
Yes.
Okay, so Tunji, let me ask you a question. For today's young Nigerian, what will you say is a Nigerian dream?
Whoa.
What's the Nigerian dream?
Japa. It is.
Like, what is the Nigerian dream?
Well, it's a Nigerian dream.
Wow.
It's something I've always wanted to find out. What's a Nigerian dream?
To get a Canadian passport.
Well, from the perspective of the
to
Nigerian
get a
dream,
Canadian passport.
is to leave.
Yeah.
It's
To Japan.
to leave.
Yeah.
So you see it a lot in the tech industry.
I need to get a young person to drink something.
Yeah,
Is that
no,
really
no, it
Nigerian?
is,
No,
it
no,
is.
no.
Jackpot,
You see it on-
it's what they
Wait,
think is.
let me give you a hint, right? The pathway to a Tech Nation visa, right? I went to drop somebody off at this English test recently, and you need to see the amount of young people I saw there. Now, this were people involved in tech, people were doing startups, young people. And there's nothing wrong with it, right? But it does feel like it's better to be Nigerian outside Nigeria.
Yes. Yeah. Hot take. Most of our venture startup industry is driven by people trying to japa.
Wait, could you recap that again?
Boom.
The motivation of 99.9% of those folks.
Of the folks that are
startups.
venturing into startups.
Really?
100%.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So
And the ones who don't want to
technician
leave
visa.
are looking to get hard currency income while in Nigeria.
But that kind of makes sense because once that startups, actually starts up, and then they get funding, they basically move their family out.
That's it.
Yeah.
So basically
Yeah.
just it's not about innovation and coming up with new ideas.
That 99.9 is huge. No, but frankly,
The last question should
99.9
put
I'm
up
an
the
active
light.
investor in the market, right? I don't see many new ideas that you won't see anywhere else in Nigeria. Right? Not to say that we don't have talent. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But what most people are doing is whatever sounds good, whatever sounds hot, that they know
Nice sound bites.
that people overseas
buy into
will be
it.
interested in. That's what I'm working on.
Yeah.
No.
Right? Not to solve Nigerian problems and this
interesting.
kind of stuff.
What do you think is a Nigerian dream, Arnold?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the same thing, right? Getting the Canadian passports.
Not really. Canada.
No one's trying to live in Ikoyi anymore and have a
little.
little boat by jet ski club. And no, it's just get a Canadian passport. And also it's because it's what's within your grasp.
Yeah.
Right? It's easier to see yourself getting a Canadian passport and buying a house in Lekki. Like it's easier.
Yeah.
It's easier to envision this.
And there's no more damning indictment of us, the elites, right? I mean, we failed, right? Because people are voting with their feet, right? I mean, in Kenya, the government is actually, doing deals with the Gulf to export people as a development strategy, right? So it's almost like we've given up on trying.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing you said about, the beach club and the boat, I think the average Nigerian is like, that will never happen for me.
It's not for me. Yeah, it's not for me.
That will
I can never
happen
afford a
for
house
me.
in Lekki.
Yeah.
I can never
So
afford a house.
why don't I go to Canada?
Yeah.
If at least if I go there, not many people know me there.
All right. We got to move on.
Yes.
But question to you guys. What is the Nigerian dream from your own perspective? We just want to know. Tell us.
It'd be great to see that in the comments.
Yeah, let's just hear it. All right, so we'll move on to issues of the corridor market.
Okay.
During the week, there was a story, PZ. I think we touched on it at some point, if I recall. They said they were going to convert some of their debt into equity, $34.2 million in debt owed to its parent company. So a little bit of backstory. If we all recall, at some point, a couple of years ago, when we had major exchange rate issues, a lot of foreign-owned companies, like companies listed in Nigeria or companies in Nigeria that are owned by foreigners, majority owned by foreigners, essentially got around this FX issue by borrowing from their related parties or from their majority shareholders. And so immediately, or as soon as that exchange rate was essentially devalued and we moved into a more free market exchange rate, they all took major losses. And so to essentially mitigate these losses, companies have been doing a number of things. One of the things is probably to raise capital. Some are thinking of probably delisting or is basically just exiting Nigeria, while others are thinking of converting some of that debt into equity. So one of those who was converting the debt into equity was PZ. So PZ wanted to convert its debt into equity and announced it at, I think it was 23 Naira or thereabouts, 23.2 if I'm not mistaken per share. A lot of minority shareholders didn't like it from what we gathered. And so I think the issue was around dilution. I think the first time they tried it a year ago, some were asking for 14 Naira per share in terms of share price. We did hear one of the minority shareholders was asking for about 38 or so Naira per share. But the guys at PZ wouldn't allow that. We didn't want that. And so they wanted to go ahead with the 23 Naira per share. Now, for context, what it does mean is that if they did convert those debt into equity at 23 Naira per share, then the minority shareholders will be diluted.
Yeah.
Massively
Right?
diluted.
Yeah. So think about it. It's almost like, that's less money coming to your pocket, essentially. And so, they did still take that plan to, I think, their EGM last week, but it fell through. They didn't get the votes they wanted because Nigerian law says you need 75% of the minority shareholders to approve. And for some reason, they didn't get up to that. And I don't know, there's a lot of story around that. I mean, check Nairametrics for that story. But I just wanted to bring this to the fore, guys. And there's a lot of minority shareholder issues, probably not just in Nigeria. I think, frankly, this is an emerging market problem, and it's one of those issues you have with investing. Why is it that minority shareholders don't really get a say? Why do investors, or why do majority shareholders like to trample on them a lot? Is it an African problem?
It's not.
Is it cultural?
It's not. This is a
Is it
perennial
regulatory?
problem in emerging markets, publicly listed securities. In emerging markets, the issue is structural, I think, and it's not limited to Nigeria. It's that these exchanges or these capital markets tend to be very shallow, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of capital
liquidity,
there.
yeah.
And thus what that means is that the individual stocks are not broadly held, right? They're very concentrated.
Yeah.
And the control shareholder tends to be the founding group, the founding family, and they view minority shareholders as
Noise.
clowns, right? As marks, right? It's they're there for liquidity, they're there for excess capital for what you want to do, they're there to, for all these different reasons, and they get mistreated. It's a very in Asia. I mean, Asia is probably the worst, right? Like Chinese, Hong Kong, Southeast Asia, famous for there are lots of very wealthy Asian families who made a lot of money on gullible minority shareholders. So it's not a Nigeria specific problem, but it's an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity. It shows that if we need to deepen our capital markets, get more people involved, get more people owning shares, and then you dilute the power of those sort of core shareholders.
So what's interesting to me though in all this is you have situations in takeovers, where, and I found this out recently, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that if a parent company or an acquirer comes in and buys majority, they don't have to give the minority the same offer that they've given the majority. Am I making sense?
We do. We have tag-along rights in Nigeria.
Do we?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, because I thought they didn't have to.
Yeah,
Because
tag-along rights
there was a
is
situation
tag-along
in Guinness,
rights.
so we're all trying to figure out whether when Toleram took Guinness off, we were all trying to figure out whether the minorities would get the same offer. And there was a situation that I
Guinness
found out
is
that
they've
no,
actually
they
launched
have.
an IPO
No,
now.
they have. But my understanding is they had the choice not to.
No, by law, if you buy a certain number of, if you acquire a certain number of shares in a company, listed company, especially in Nigeria, by law, you should launch a mandatory takeover offer. Now, if they don't want it, then that's a different thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think the thing that doesn't help is when you go to those AGMs. Have you ever you've been to one of them?
Yeah. Are you trying to give us EGM drama now? But you know these things are usually orchestrated. Come on. Man.
Yes, I do. I do know that. And I think that's part of the reasons why they're not, at least here, they're not taken seriously. Because you tend to see...
I don't cost the stairs anyone EGM.
We're not... I didn't know you knew that. I did not know you knew that.
We hear things.
I did not know you knew that.
You tend to see whoever is moderating knows all the people he's going to call or she's going to call. And then he goes, number, they start something, their hands everywhere here. It's like, no.
It's almost like a political fiasco.
It's like a
And then
village
the person
meeting,
will stand up and be like,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I am something, the chairman of something.
And I want to say, commend you.
First, I want to thank you for your wonderful performance.
I want to
Congratulate you.
It's the whole ceremony, man. It's the whole ceremony.
Every time I see that, I kind of feel, it's also, so with them not getting that 70%. It's kind of surprising, because usually it does feel like the AGM is sorted before the AGM most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be.
This was obviously a very democratic.
So was this probably
AGM.
because there was maybe the minority share? I mean, some backstory here as well. The minority shareholders were strong minority shareholders,
Right.
so they weren't just pushovers.
Right.
They weren't just regular people who didn't have a stake. In fact, one of the minority shareholders owned 40% of minority shares,
Right.
in quote, right?
Right.
And so maybe that was why this was probably difficult. But in a case where you don't have that kind of minority shareholder that is, in quote, institutional, right? How do you deal with things like that? I mean,
but they should have approached. They should have approached the
So how are
minority
these things
shareholder
done?
first. They should have had you should have a conversation with the minority shareholders before you actually go ahead.
But we've
Right?
seen,
You should get a buy-in. You should get a buy-in with them first.
Yeah.
But
Right,
we've seen
before you-
stories like this in Nigeria over the years.
Yeah.
So
Strong arm
many
everyone else,
stories.
man.
And
Yeah.
so many stories, so many companies.
I know GSK
We just
went through
don't
the
want to
same
talk.
thing.
No name names.
GSK went through the same thing a few years ago. Same thing. Just trying to strong arm.
And you had a lot of companies that have done this and basically just got away with murder. Escape.
Of
you've seen
course,
that happen.
yeah.
You've seen that a lot happen.
Well, I mean, to your point, I mean, this is unusual because you had these minority shareholders who are very sophisticated, very influential. And again, therein lies the opportunity. I mean, like all these pension funds we have in Nigeria, which basically just buy government bonds. This is an opportunity for them, right? They can come in and control their
And I think there'll be more respect for them if it was a pension fund.
Okay, did this not
More
work?
respect for
One
the
of
pension
that
fund.
twist though, did this not work because PZ is majority shares are basically Greeks? If they were Nigerians, they probably would have gone away with this.
It could, I mean, there's some truth to that. I mean, they may have had more moves to make, but I would say that, while PZ cousins aren't nominally Nigerian, they've
We're just trying to get someone in there.
My hot take. I mean, they've been here for a very long time. They understand the system. They understand how things work. If they maybe, they perhaps were a little bit, to your point. I mean, most AGMs go smoothly. They might have not
done enough work.
Right. They might not have come into this as aggressively as they could have. They might have underestimated the issues. Right. Yeah. So, and maybe that's a good, we've been very negative.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe this is
a positive,
Yeah.
right? Our capital markets are maturing. We're getting very into, we know the minority shareholders, full disclosure, right? So, right.
But let me ask you, Frank.
Those are smart, those are sharp cookies, right? So, you were dealing with sharp people. So maybe they didn't expect that.
But let me ask you, you mentioned if pension funds are more involved in the equity market. So South Africa, for example, has a huge,
right.
I believe 40% of South African pensions can invest in the equity markets.
Right.
In a market like that, do you find this sort of thing where pension funds actually hold such a huge majority or hold a huge amounts of equities?
Yeah, no, you do, and
Okay.
it is South Africa has a very large institutional investor, diverse. There's so many funds, so many managers, so and they're sharp, right?
Yeah.
So you can it's a real market, right? It's not right.
We don't have
No. Full disclosure, the head of the NGX is a very good friend of mine. He does a great job.
Anyway, guys,
it's a very good market.
we definitely will bring the head of NGX on Drinks and Mics one of these days. We'll also bring SEC here one of these days to address some of these issues.
Yes. Yeah.
But we got to segue because of time. One of the other major news that made the rounds during the week was MTN. MTN announced that it was planning to spin off its fintech units in Nigeria, Ghana, Uganda, in exchange for MasterCard stake or something. Tunji, this is your space basically.
My space guy.
On Drinks and Mics when it comes to fintech.
When it comes to fintech, the fintech guy.
So why is I thought MTN Momo and MTN fintech why? What's behind this move? Maybe let's not even decide, but what's behind this move? What's the wisdom behind this?
So I do know that.
Let me just mention what they said. Following the BISCO process to identify and potentially introduce strategic minority investors into MTN Group Fintech, we executed. This is from MasterCard, though. MTN and MasterCard also signed a memorandum of understanding which provides for a minority investment by MasterCard into the group fintech based on a total enterprise valuation of $5.2 billion for the business on a cash and debt-free basis. The signing of the definitive investment agreement is expected to occur in the very near term as we approach finalization. Nothing really much in here, though. I mean, I thought there was something much in here, but it's really nothing much.
So the MTN thing is a few things that they've been very visionary over the years. They started with the basic, call that was fantastic. They spread really quickly. The vision in Nigeria was also very good. They saw ahead of the curve.
Yep.
Once CBN introduced the mobile money PSP conversation, they were first in line. They didn't get the license for whatever reason. I can remember I saw a few stalls that they had put out because they were ready to go. I'm talking about 2008, 2009. This was really at the core of it. They didn't get headway into it. And I think what they eventually did with Momo in Ghana is a reflection of what they felt they could do in Nigeria. But Nigeria the banking system was just too far ahead to, allow that kind of a thing come in. This spin-off is, in my opinion, and this is what I feel, right? Voice can get higher, right? And the reason why voice can't get higher is because you now have alternatives. You have WhatsApp calls. Most people even use WhatsApp calls these days. There's Zoom calls. There are many alternatives to picking up your phone and calling directly. So data is the alternative. Data isn't as defensible as calls.
What do you mean by defensible? Sorry.
So, I mean, alternatives. There are a lot more alternatives on data than there are to calls. So in call space, we have 4 or 5 players in Nigeria, I think. In data, you get my point.
Right.
It's not as defensible. What is the future of MTN if they don't diversify? Fintech is. They've seen it happen in Ghana. They've seen how they've been able to spin off a lot of other products off their Momo. Nigeria may not be the story. Because if you look at Nigeria, you will not see what
it's MTN Group, by the way, global.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you look at Nigeria as a standalone case, you will not understand the narrative. But enter Ghana and huge. See how
huge.
The penetration of Momo is, and then you start to understand what they're trying to do across the African continent.
But it's going to say shocking to me how they just didn't get Nigeria right with Momo.
No, it's not them. It's not them. It's not them. It's not them.
Because you see what they've done in Ghana, 17 or so million subscribers.
You said it. Our banks.
It's not them. They got it right. They knew it. They saw it. They tried everything. I know they tried it. They even got a super agent license at one point, because that was the only thing they would get. They were trying to get everything, but they were just, restricted. They saw it. I'm serious. 2008, 2009 was, when MTN was mauling this. They came in hot.
Yeah. So there was a very interesting footnote to this story that should not be overlooked. I mean, so one, why did they do this?
It's just to interject. It's something that started in 2023, though. So
Yeah. So number one, they're doing this because they're making money hand over fist in Momo, right? So this is a way to unlock value, because if you have it all packaged together, the voice, the this, the that, the valuation of that is one thing. But if you pull this out, and by the way, Airtel already did this, right? So Airtel, separated their financial, got money from, I think, Visa and, Qatar and all kinds of things, and got a great valuation. So I think MTN was always going to do something like this. And it's interesting that MasterCard, which is Visa's arch enemy, kind of pushed this. But there's a really interesting footnote, which is you can now transfer money from your Nigerian MTN Momo account to somebody in Ghana.
That's a cross-border
seamlessly. You can seamlessly. So let's say you're a market woman in Ghana and I'm just visiting from Nigeria.
There you go.
I don't have CD. I don't have Naira.
Yeah.
I can just pay you direct to your Momo account. This is fantastic.
Is there a limit?
I don't know. But
even if there's a limit,
but why has not the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Central Bank of Ghana not already made this kind of thing already easy?
Aren't they trying that with that Afrexim thing? What's that Afrexim thing they're going to put in place?
PAPs. Yes, they are, but
It's supposed to be central bank to central bank.
MTN has a massive platform. They deserve it. They've been here for 30 years building. You know, they own the customers. They built all the rails, so they can just do it internally.
Yeah.
But the fact that borderless payments, you know, is coming from a mobile phone company. It's interesting. It's just interesting.
I'm sure whoever is at the people behind MTN must have been confused for years about Nigeria. Like, what kind of?
So I didn't know there was a cross-border payment thing. I've always talked about EcoBank, right? EcoBank has an amazing cross-border. And this move is something I expect an EcoBank to do. Where in some of the countries, I've always said just scrap the bank. You know, just remove the payments and make it an actual cross-border fintech payments.
Exactly.
I'm actually shocked that MTN is beating EcoBank to this.
Yes.
Like you said, it's coming from a mobile phone, not a bank.
I just wish they could be. So I do also get the fact that if they came into the fintech space, Jesus.
Right. MTN.
Right.
In Nigeria, Jesus.
Right. And honestly,
what's the fear though?
Are you kidding?
The interesting
First
question,
of all,
would they be able to compete? I mean,
yeah, they would.
How? They've got the subscriber numbers already.
Yeah.
They've got the numbers.
Let me tell you. There's a company that the layers on MTN in most African countries.
Right.
So they sell something else, but so they lay on MTN. They're partners with MTN. So what they do, and then I was having a conversation with them, and they're like in Ghana, for instance. What they do is that they just do the SMS blast. You know, they do SMS blast to 100,000 people, and then they get 10,000 new subscribers from it. You know, in Nigeria, you can't do that. You have to cluster. You can't do the whole. You just have to go to Ikeja. You know, you have to pick certain kinds
Nigeria
of people.
is big now.
And then you asked an interesting question. EcoBank, how come they couldn't do it, and why the MTN do it? You know, it's because they make so much money.
Yeah.
So when you how do people do cell phone here? They do prepay.
Yeah.
So MTN is one of the few people in Africa that just has bags and bags of Naira, bags and bags of CD. So for them to do that match is easy. They have Naira here, they have CD here, they have the floats, right? They're almost economic nations unto themselves at this point, you know? So it's very interesting.
All right, guys. Another interesting numbers that came out during the week was IHS. IHS numbers were out. I don't know if you guys saw it. Just to read out 1 point. In case y'all are wondering what IHS is, IHS is a tower company. That's IHS Towers. They basically provide tower services for the likes of MTN and Airtel. In fact, MTN and Airtel combined makes about 50 plus or so % of IHS's revenue. So the numbers were out, and it caught my attention because, geez, I was seeing $1.7 billion in revenues for the year or so, and then $1.5 billion or so in revenues, and then I was seeing losses of about $1.6 billion, something like that, something crazy. I'm not really sure what that is about.
Jesus,
another victim of the Naira.
Yeah, $1.7 billion. I beg your pardon. $1.6 billion in losses, and this is a company that is very essential to what MTN Airtel does in Nigeria, and they are actually quite huge here. As much as they're not listed here, they're listed in the New York Stock Exchange.
They have a couple of Eurobonds as well.
Yeah, they've also got they also play in the bond market as well. I'm just looking at their numbers as well. They did say that one of the reasons why they had massive losses was because of FX. Their fourth quarter numbers was actually okay. They eked out profit in the fourth quarter, but the full year numbers was largely due to FX related issues. Any cause of concerns for you?
It's tough. I mean, this. I mean, we telecoms is one of our big areas, and we're very close to the story. It's tough. We started the conversation about the pipeline that burst and how that could affect, the administration's attempt to project itself as a welcome home for foreign investment, and this is a difficult story for that, because IHS, if just to make it very simple, what they do, when you make your calls happen because of the towers they have. And you see the towers all over. You drive around, you don't know what they are. Those big metal structures with the little dishes, that's what they do. And it's like a real estate business. They rent them out to MTN, to Airtel, to complete their calls. And their biggest portfolio of towers is Nigeria. It's where the company started. The company came from Nigeria. Those guys are here. And in fact, the office is not too far from where we're sitting right now, right? So it's frustrating. If I were the management team, I'd be frustrated because they're actually doing well. Like
doing well in what way?
In Naira. In Naira terms, those towers print cash, right? I mean, they're essential. They work well. They've done everything to make they run on solar. They have all kinds of, computer systems to make them efficient and so on and so forth. But they make Naira and the company reports in dollars, right? So at the end of the day, and so IHS is busily trying to buy in LATAM, in Asia, diversify away from Nigeria. It's kind of but again, looking for the silver lining, I think it's an opportunity for local investors because, the tower assets in Africa are funded primarily in dollars. These are stable, cash flowing assets, very predictable cash flows that everyone needs. That the cash flows are coming from the best names in Nigeria. We talked about MTN and how strong they are, Airtel, how strong they are. That's where the cash flows are coming from.
So
if you're a pension fund,
so you buy
So if you flip it to Naira, if you flip the dollar
to
Naira, and then the volatility stops, so they won't have those FX issues anymore. They will be Naira. I do get it, but
how do they price? I mean, how do they sell to MTN? Is it in Naira or in dollars?
It's now so long ago it was in dollars, but that was during Africa Rising and blah blah blah. But now it's.
I think even recently, as a couple of years
ago.
They
just renegotiated.
It used to be FX linked. So pay in Naira, but linked to the FX exchange rate. I think they've lost that pricing power. And I think, the power has flipped. Like when back in the days, it's a huge capital investment to build towers. So the networks, the MTNs and co, were like, whatever you want, just build these towers. Now they're there, right? But
I thought MTN
has the power.
Though. I mean, I think it was
yes, of course. Yeah. They sold and lease back. But if you build these towers, they're now there. There's only 4 people in the country who can buy you have all the power, right? There's MTN, there's Glow, there's Airtel, there's 9 Mobile, 1 or 2 ISPs.
You can't come and sell to
right. Right. So they set the terms, right? So the power has flipped, and so they're kind of got them by the
All right, Arnold. This company is valued at about $1.4 billion. Share price was up 2% despite this, result, 1.6 billion or so losses. There was a report from TD Cowen that suggests the value of IHS should be around $15, $16.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was
what is it based on?
Back on the back of a fourth quarter profit, because they did eke out profit in the fourth quarter.
Turn around.
And it's currently at $4.5 or so per share, and they're projecting $15, $16 per share. Would you buy?
So for me, it's expansion plan, right? So I know that they're aggressively pushing LATAM and a bit of Asia. So for me, it's expansion plan and the population and everything there. So I'm buying more into the macro story and the EM macro growth story than Nigeria. Nigeria is, I don't know. Nigeria, I don't know. But cash cow in Nigeria, but FX issue. And FX, I don't know. FX for this sort of businesses, I don't know. But for me, it's the EM macro story that I buy into. But would I take a $4 company and hold until 15? How long would that take?
Interesting fun fact. This company has had nothing but analyst buy ratings since it listed. It's never not.
Regardless.
Yeah, well, because it listed at, not per share, but the whole company's value at around $6 billion. It traded down to as low as $1 billion. Now it's like 1.4. So everyone has always said this company's undervalued. And I do believe it's undervalued.
Okay.
Really?
I do. I really do. Because they're being penalized for things that aren't in their control, right? Like, I mean, they don't control the Naira, right? And this is a big market. Should they not be in Nigeria, right? Like,
maybe change your debt mix.
I think you need to change.
And that's what we're talking about.
Change your funding mix.
And you can control that. You can control that.
For instance, I mean,
to do it.
if the revenue is constant, it's something the pension funds could look into. I
Exactly.
mean, it's right here.
Yeah.
You have the money, you could give it to them. They could, you know.
Exactly.
All right, guys, this has been Drinks and Mics brought to you by Nairametrics, and it's been a very engaging session so far. A lot of stuff to talk about, but time is not always our friend. I mean, we got things to do, man. So this is the point where we sort of segue into buy, sell, or hold. But I just wanted to touch on something briefly, Franklin, and I wanted to talk about US aid because I've got a lot of messages around that. Like, should we be worried and all that? I mean, you do have a bit of experience around here. So many
polarizing opinions.
And if I use Tunji's words, like, you know, when you just start to go into those YouTube videos and you go into rabbit holes and things like that. So,
especially by our famous ambassador.
Is US aid good or bad? Like,
okay, you know, interesting. So yes, So full disclosure, I sit on the U.S. Nigeria Security Council. I also sit on the President's Advisory Council doing business in Africa in the U.S. Very familiar with USAID. I'll start by saying that there are very good people there, right? People who are very committed, very passionate about what they do. Some of the best people you'll ever meet. Work hard, make much less than they could make in other jobs in the private sector and so on, et cetera, et cetera. I do think that this kind of blunt instrument reset does force Africa to think a little bit, because my issue is not USAID or America or any other developed country providing aid to Africa. It's really us as the recipients and how we think about ourselves. And again, back to what we said, we have an immature strategic policy framework on the continent, and it's not just Nigeria; it's continent-wide. I'll start by saying that, does this affect you on the Nigerian side? Yes, 100%, because you'll be surprised about how far that money goes. Out of every dollar of aid money, 40 cents is U.S. money, right? So the reduction of that will reduce the net amount of money that comes to the continent from a foreign, not just aid, but development perspective, right? And all these development institutions that invest, I'm not talking about this aid, like the investments that you see, you know, you talked about some of these, I won't name them, but some of these foreign companies that are here get money from these development financial institutions, which are owned by the foreign office of those countries. They're paid for by the taxpayers in those countries. So of course they have other motives, and they should. I mean, it's just right.
Can you expand when you say other motives?
Well, I mean, look, no. I'm being very direct here. Like, I mean,
Of course.
Let's leave the U.S. out of it to make it less polarizing. I'm British. I pay my taxes. It goes into the British Development Organization. If they are not achieving objectives that advance the United Kingdom's interests,
then what's the
they're being deleterious of their duty, right? That's what they should be doing, right? So it's not their problem, and that's their prerogative. They're British taxpayers. They're advancing British interests. That's fine, but we're Nigerian, right? And we're receiving the money, and it's not like the people in charge are not well aware of where this money comes from, right? So, and do we even need this money, right? Like,
So
if you're a government,
okay,
and you cannot feed, clothe your people, and heal them when they're sick, what actually are you doing? Right? Isn't that the most basic job of a government?
but there's this whole idea of Nigeria or Africa not needing aid, right? Debt aid.
I mean, that's not real. Right? Like, it feels good. It sounds good.
I'm like,
It feels good. It sounds good.
I mean, a lot of rhetorical. Like, we don't need aid. Like, we don't need their aid, but
That's not
What's that? Dambe Samoy wrote a whole book. That Zambian lady wrote a whole book. I mean, I don't want to go into
God
it.
bless her.
wrote a
but-
book?
No, Dambe
Dambe
Samoy.
Samoy.
I've always just believed, like you said, I would not give you money in billions without having my agenda.
Yeah. I mean, that's
sorted.
Yeah, of course.
And a lot of the
So
times,
none of this money comes free, though.
It should not come
should
free.
not.
If I'm giving you money for free and I have no agenda behind it, then there's something wrong with me.
So are you saying
why were you guys hating on Belt and Road the last time though?
No, we were not now.
weren't?
Why should we be?
So for me now, are you saying, Franklin, that this restriction or pausing or halting of aid is going to be felt in a massive way by us?
Yeah, and then what sort of industries should we be worried about now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of infrastructure that gets
Sidelined.
Yeah, because and it's not direct, right? So, okay, I want to build a large bridge or a railway, right? To do that, I have to spend a lot of money figuring out, is the soil correct? Am I going to displace people along the route? What's the technical specifications before I even go and talk to a bank, right? Who pays for that?
Oh,
The Chinese are paying for it now, though.
The feasibility studies, are they?
Historically,
They're
that's
building the
I guess so, yeah.
no, but historically, that's like USAID, USTDA, FCDO in Britain.
So they do pay for things.
They
like
pay
that.
for things like that, and that then unlocks capital. And that capital, by the way, a lot of times will have a guarantee from FMO or Proparco or these guys, right? So I think people underestimate the impact of those things, and all these fund managers that we see right here that are carrying Prado and all that, right? Who are the investors? Right?
Yeah.
And it's not just USAID in America, all the entire Western world
who's the
dramatically cut aid, right?
Yeah.
Has dramatically cut aid.
Yeah.
So you will see it affect, right? Like, you're sending your kids abroad for this and that. Those elites, it will affect the elites. I would just put it that way. It will affect the elites in a big way. Because
guys.
I got a GIZ contract, I got a contract from FCDO. I mean, these kind of things will come in.
Yeah.
All right. So we gotta go, but as usual, we don't leave without buy, sell, or hold. Francis. So I'm gonna start where you stopped, and there's one of my favorite books. It's called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And for people who know me, I have a term, but people call EHM. So looking back at USAID and everything that they've said, that book, The Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and everything that he said, is it true? Is he correct? Buy, sell, or hold? Buy is yes. Of course. Sell is no. Hold is
Of course it's true. Buy. Of course it's true.
Ooh.
And why wouldn't it be true? We have to be grown-ups, right? We have to be
be
grown-ups.
yeah.
Right? Of course.
Why would it not, in any ramification, why would it not be true?
I know.
Yeah, bye.
Have you read the book though?
I've heard about it. So I haven't read the book.
You gotta read that book.
Oh, why would it
I've
not
only
be
read
true?
But you're EHM though.
Am I?
Yeah. Like
So Arnold is probably one of those people that is caught in the crossfire, doesn't know he's
I have a heart.
doing it.
I just have a heart.
He has a heart.
outside of his.
I'm a capitalist with a heart. With a conscience. I'm a capitalist with a
All right,
conscience.
so we move on to the next buy, sell, or
Okay.
hold. Franklin. So this pipeline blast and everything that's going on in River State, is gonna get sorted out within the next few weeks before Easter. Buy, sell, or hold.
Okay, I will say buy with the proviso that I think that it won't be solved, but they will have a framework of how they will solve the problem by Easter.
So there's two things. There's the politics and there's the explosions. Are you talking about the politics getting sorted out before Easter?
Everything sorted out.
No
more
I don't-
explosions.
I don't. Sell. It won't. I don't think it will.
So this is like gonna linger.
Yeah, I don't think it will. And I'm going to go on again about, for me, it worries me, man.
I think the president can't solve this politically.
It's come this far. If it could, it would have been solved.
I will hold, and the simple reason is, and I think this is also the biggest test of the president so far. I don't even think his biggest test was removing subsidy. This is his biggest test politically, economically, and just being able to all-roundedly look at a vision if he fails at this,
Yeah.
I don't see how he succeeds at anything else.
Oh, sorry for dry talk.
Yeah,
Because
agree
when
with
we do
that.
buy sell holes, we do have drinks now.
Yeah, need to ask it again.
So I don't know how he succeeds at anything else if he fails at this.
I
so
think
he
that's fair.
for his own good.
That's huge. That's
No, but really,
think
look
that's
at
fair.
it. If
Yeah,
he
I tend
fails
to
at
agree
this,
though,
he
yeah.
doesn't
This is like
succeed
his
at
biggest
any-
political task.
exactly. So he needs, for his own good,
yeah, he needs to solve this.
he needs to solve this.
All right, so we'll move on. Buy, sell, or hold. I'm going to come to you, Tunji. Start with you. I'm sure Tunji will like this. But
Let's hear it. Something informal or something formal. Yeah,
I
micro
always wanna
pensions.
start with him.
Buy, sell, or hold.
So, MBS data
Yeah.
is not trustworthy anymore. Buy, sell, or hold.
Of course, it's trustworthy. Sell. I'm totally.
Oh, you
all
trust
for-
their numbers.
I trust their
Do you
numbers.
trust their inflation numbers too?
I trust their numbers. I've been to the streets in gathering those numbers
Streets,
before.
streets.
I've been on the streets.
I told you guys,
I've been on the
seriously.
streets to gather these numbers. I've been to very deep parts of Nigeria where you
But
would
that's a
not
different
go
MBS
to.
though.
Well, I
Okay,
want
that's like
to
Ojo
believe the
Elegba.
institution. I want to believe the institution remains. But at the time, I've been to places that you
we
will not
heard
think of.
you.
So
Let's go to.
I mean, I have no reason not to trust. I
you
don't know.
do?
I feel like you need.
Is this
I feel
a
like
political
you,
statement?
No, I feel like you know something that we don't. I feel like
I know. I'm
it's
just
such a-
asking. I'm like, I told you guys, like that's the comments we're hearing.
Yeah, like, I think people are just gone so because of the rebase.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's what it is. I don't.
So you trust those inflation numbers.
I have to.
So that's a buy for you.
Yeah.
Your chest down, like you're very sure. You really
Do you know something I
So
don't?
are you
I'm not worried.
You're gonna model all those numbers. You model.
I mean, we have to. We don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Franklin,
Yeah.
you're-
Yeah, I'm also a seller. And by the way, I mean, this is
sell or
another,
buy. You don't trust
I
it.
believe their numbers. so
Okay,
I'm
so
a
you
seller
buy.
of the rumor. And again, this is one of those things where
Okay.
this happens everywhere. China, they don't believe the numbers. The US, they say the Fed.
But
makes up
recently,
the
Senegal
numbers.
the president just came out and said, well, the numbers they've had for some time.
They mess up the numbers. Yeah,
Yeah, all
they
messed
mess up
up.
the numbers.
That is not MBS, by the way.
That's Senegal.
That is not MBS. And you know this is not MBS because you know in that time, you know the kind of things we went through to keep the numbers legitimate.
Final buy, sell, or hold. PZ, done deal. Deal is done. They're not going to come back anymore. Buy, sell, or hold.
I'm going to go with hold.
You think there's a solution somewhere down the line?
I think you've got very smart investors involved.
Let me flip that question a little
Yes.
bit. Buy, sell, or hold. PZ wins. Minority shareholders wins. No, PZ wins.
Mhm.
Minority shareholders lose.
Sell.
Ooh.
Sell.
PZ wins.
You think PZ wins? down the line?
Yeah, I have a feeling that PZ wins.
I mean, round one, minority shareholders won. I mean,
Yeah, it's still ongoing.
Of course, PZ, minority shareholders win, being that PZ eventually sells to them at the price that they want, which is
Yeah.
30 something to 49.
So I'm hold on the basis that they need to sell whatever dream it is to those minority shareholders. You know,
okay.
I'm just
Yeah.
thinking Don Corleone calling them to yeah.
All right, this has been Drinks and Mics brought to you by... I beg your pardon. This has been Drinks and Mics brought to you by Nairametrics. Thank you so much for such another amazing show. Thanks to Franklin for coming. As usual,
man. Privileged
to be here.
We do
Privileged.
our usual. I mean,
Of course.
Cheers. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
I'm shares into the future of Nigeria. May we find the national project.
$2 trillion GDP.
of course, we won't end without saying big thank you once again to supporters of the show and Ledrop for the drinks that you have on the table. Everything you have here, courtesy of Ledrop. We also have our investment partners in the show, the organization that supports the show from an investment point of view. Some information that you get here, Quadros Capital. Of course, we all know who is here. But I mean,
And do not forget you guys in the comments. I
Yes.
love you guys.
Yes.
You know I always come on your comments and everything. even when you're insulting me, I still love you regardless. But the thing about it is, like I keep saying, it's a show about facts and opinions. We give the facts, we give our opinions, but we also want your facts. We also want your opinions because you might have deeper insight than us. So please come into the comment section. Let's know what you're talking about.
All right, for those who keep wondering about when are you ever going to get a female on this show, very soon, guys. We're working hard on that. However, until we do this again next week, do have a profitable week ahead.
Cheers.
Boom!
Yeah.